This is a song I played last night, and I got off the plane, and I was so disheveled, and I was cool, because I was coming here, and I knew I would be received. And there was Bob McWilliams sitting there in the second row, who first brought me to his rec room, and then to to the church, and then to Liberty Hall, and now they have an art center in Lawrence, Kansas. And I just felt the warmth of that room, and it's been something that's something I expect right now amongst us musicians. You know, we have a lot to share. We talk a lot about gear. We talk a lot about United Airlines. We talk a lot about how tough it is. And then there's just so much acceptance of just however you're living your story. And even when you hit a funny curve in the road. And show little judgment. And it helps me feel, and perhaps some of you feel, like I'm part of something that's a little bigger than just the everyday little kinks and turns, and part of something that is greater, a greater story of understanding and of belonging. And so this was a song I wrote after traveling with a bunch of really salty dudes on a tour bus, and hearing a whole bunch of different things. But then at some point they all like pulled out their wallets and flipped them open and had pictures of their daughters. And my drummer said, "When she opened her blue eyes when she was born, I was her slave." And it was that grace, that anchored all of this. And so this is called "The Mercy of the Fallen." Oh, my fair North Star, I have held to you dearly. I had asked you to steer me till one cloud scattered night. I got lost, and in my travels I met Leo the lion, met a king and met a giant with their we're going to sort of whittle ourselves down now to nothing. So I want to say goodbye and thank you to Christine Kim. This is a song that was inspired by many things, just a lot of walks around New York City. And New York City was built by all sorts of immigrant groups. And then I finally went to the Tenement Museum, and I recommend that to all songwriters. It's very evocative, lots of haunting ghosts to help you along. And after I went there, I walked around and I really started to write this song in earnest, this song that really recognized all of the different contributions of this country. And I wrote it with a jazz cat, because I heard jazz cadences in my mind, and I was like, oh man, here we go. I'm not in John Prineville anymore. And I turned to my wonderful keyboard player of many years, Bryn Roberts. From Canada, and he's got Trudeauian good looks. Anyway, speaking of nations, I wrote this book, and I'm going to show it to you. And I don't usually say this, but I'm happy that I wrote this book. It's sometimes like, I wrote this book, whatever. But I'm happy I wrote this book. It's basically a book about coming from 1995, boarded up stores, downturn of manufacturing, factories, mines, all of these things, big boxes coming in, malls coming in, people just not knowing if we'd have downtowns, to where we are today, which are greened in downtowns. And so I came up with all these categories for what brought us back. And it's not just us saying, we want to come back to our downtowns. I have friends who said that they wanted to do that, and that's great, but they had no money. I know them. They don't buy a broom at Walmart or downtown. They make their brooms. But there was some desire to do this. And I thought, okay, what is that? And I came up with all these categories, and one of them was culture. How we come back through culture. And I encourage everybody to continue what you're doing, because I know that you're already doing it. Open mics in high schools, spaces repurposed in really bizarre ways, pitching in our efforts for sound systems, starting concert series and knowing that that's going to bring a worldly welcome to our little towns. And allow our kids to sit beside us and listen to songs by John Prine about Sam Stone and his heroin addiction, and look at our parents listening to them and their friends listening, and knowing that we're going to have a widened conversation. I really applaud people who bring different aspects of culture to their town. It's a really accessible humanity. It's one thing to say, I want peace, I want democracy. It's another thing to bring accessible humanity to our towns and cities, and that's what musicians are doing. And Art Menius is somebody that I talked about. He lives around Carrboro, Massachusetts, North Carolina, and has worn many hats there. And in the last part of this chapter about Carrboro, he said that he wanted the new motto of the town to be, and they were voting to approve it, it's Carrboro, feel free. So I think that's a wonderful, I want to thank Art Menius for everything he's done for Folk Alliance, as well as the whole musical community. He is the heart. And I know it's really hard in the music business now. I want to thank you all for continuing to bring these little, missives of humanity into your songs and into these towns. It really helps us remind ourselves that we've come from a boarded up place to a very green place, and that's how we're going to continue to go, no matter who our president is. We have come a long way in this country. We're worldly, and we're multicultural, and we're caring, and we're going to go farther than this.
Say they came to find this. They'll tell their children of the day that as they walked, their tailor's chalk would trace the air. There were peeling walls and darkened halls, hot and smoky nights, and yes, they strived, but when their boat arrived, a statue raised her light. And New York was a harbor. The dreamers work with calloused hands. For who you are will survive you. The pattern fades as city stands. It's New York, it's New York, it's New York. Today you feel the sorrow. You thought today you'd pack it in. And overhead, the billboard said, "We told you so." The poor were gone or jailed at dawn. The robber barons free. They stole the art. Yeah, they broke your heart. So much for their liberty. But New York is a harbor. They're working hard on West 74th to find some beds, a free lawyer. The midnight oil burns like a torch. It's New York, it's New York, it's New York. Cheer for the Joe on payday, the dancing girl when she gets to Broadway, the workers' lunch on a crossbeam in the sky. So don't you let yourself forget, a spirit lives on the island. She's rolling past the Roebling's Bridge, and in the dark, through Olmsted's Park to Harlem's Gate. Souls were born on golden horns, but she can hear them still. And some last call she's been at Stonewall Inn to beat the morning's chill. And New York is a harbor. It was so then and evermore. It holds the dream, tells the story. A distant boat, a golden door. It's New York, it's New York.
And I want to thank Kansas City for hosting us. A beautiful, beautiful city.